Imagine hiring the most brilliant consultant in the world. Knows everything, understands everything, answers in a second. There is just one detail in the contract, written in small print. Every morning, when they walk into the office, they remember nothing from the day before. Nothing. Not the project you discussed for 6 hours, not the decision you made together, not your name. So every morning, before being useful at all, they have to reread everything. Every email, every document, every conversation, from the beginning. And you pay for the rereading too. This consultant exists. You probably use it every day. It is called artificial intelligence. Today we talk about what this amnesia really costs in money, in electricity, and in data centers built in the desert. And about a different way of doing things, born not in Silicon Valley, but in an independent lab in Bergamo, Italy. Start with a concrete scene. An ordinary Tuesday, an ordinary company. An analyst is working with her AI assistant on a complicated file. 6 months of conversations, decisions, corrections, data. She asks a simple question. When did we decide to switch suppliers? The system does not go look for that memory. It has no memory to look in. What it does is reread the entire conversation from scratch. All of it. Every word of the previous 6 months gets reloaded, reprocessed, repaid. One piece of jargon, then I will leave you alone. The token. A token is the unit of text for an AI, roughly 3/4 of a word. It is also the unit of cost. Every token read or written is compute. Compute is silicon, and silicon is electricity. When you hear this AI is expensive, what you're really hearing is this AI reads a lot of tokens. Now the number. On Locomo, the standard international benchmark for long-term conversational memory, an average conversation weighs about 26,000 tokens. A system without real memory rereads all of them. For every single question. Ask for the time, 26,000 tokens. Ask for a name, 26,000 tokens. Ask 100 questions in a day, 2.6 million tokens, to retrieve the same information over and over. It is a waiter who, to bring you a coffee, reads the entire order book aloud, from opening day. Now widen the shot. This story is not about one company. It is about the planet. By late 2025, the world runs more than 12,000 data centers. 12,000 buildings full of servers, nearly half of them, 5,427, in the United States. Germany has 529, Italy 168. And inside this fleet, there is a special class, the hyperscalers, the giants above 1 megawatt run by Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Meta. About 1,200 of them in early 2025. 130 to 140 new ones every year. Another 800 under construction or planned. How much power do they eat? The International Energy Agency did the math. 415 terawatt hours in 2024. 1 terawatt hour is a billion kilowatt hours. For scale, Italy, an industrial country of 60 million people, consumes about 300 terawatt hours a year. Data centers are at 415. The world's data centers already consume more than all of Italy. And this is only the beginning. The IEA projects 945 terawatt hours by 2030, more than double in 6 years. 3% of all electricity on Earth. Inside that curve, there is one engine, artificial intelligence. Today, it accounts for 5 to 15% of data center consumption, but it is the part that runs, up 50% in 2025 alone, heading to 35 to 50% by 2030. The 4 big hyperscalers spent over $370 billion on infrastructure in 2025. McKinsey estimates $6.7 trillion of cumulative investment by 2030. Let that sink in. We are building, at the fastest pace in industrial history, buildings whose main job, for a growing share of the workload, is rereading things that have already been read. Here the story changes scale. Because the right question is not, how do we build more data centers? It is, why doesn't AI remember? Short answer, because remembering is hard. Not technically hard, conceptually hard. Save everything that passes through and you get a landfill. millions of duplicated, contradictory, useless fragments, where searching cost as much as rereading. The first AI memory systems were born exactly like this. The industry calls them, without affection, naive RAG. Store every piece, vectorize every piece, hope for the best. Cortex starts from the opposite principle, and the principle comes from the oldest place there is, the brain. Your brain does not record the day like a camera. It filters at the door. What is redundant never even gets encoded. Then, at night, sleep consolidates. It merges fragments into summary memories, throws away the noise, keeps the meaning. And when two memories contradict each other, it does not delete one at random. It leaves you that nagging feeling of, wait, wasn't it different? Cortex does exactly these three things in software. First, the quality gate, the bouncer at the door. Every incoming piece of information is classified before being saved. Is it new? Is it an update? Or is it a duplicate in disguise? Duplicates are turned away at the door, and they never pay another cent of compute. Second, the REM cycle. Like sleep, a periodic process rereads recent memories and consolidates them. 10 fragments about the same decision become one dense memory with its sources. The name is not marketing. It is literally inspired by the REM phase of human sleep. Third, tracked conflicts. If new data contradicts an authoritative memory, Cortex does not overwrite in silence. It raises a red flag. These two things do not match. Someone should decide. In a world worried about AI hallucinations, a memory that declares its own doubts is not a detail. The result is a memory that is small, dense, and queryable. When the AI asks a question, Cortex does not hand back the archive. It hands back the 20 right memories. Now, the numbers. Real, measured, not promised. They come from Cortex's production instance and from the Locomo benchmark, the one used by published systems. 1,986 questions over months-long conversations. The production instance, as of July 3, 2026, 55,034 fragments received. The quality gate rejected 81.9% of them as redundant. What got in was consolidated down to 1,729 memories. From 55,034 to 1,729. And here, let's stop for a second, because the sharp listener raises a hand right about now. Wait, if the pieces collapse by 97%, why do you then say the space saved is 29? Great question. And the answer explains how this memory thinks better than any slide. Two different measurements of two different things. The first counts pieces, and most of the collapse happens at the door. 45,085 fragments, 81.9%, are rejected by the quality gate before they ever get in. They never occupied a single byte. You cannot save the space of something that never entered the house. Their saving is a different one. Compute never executed. No vectorization, no extraction, no index to maintain. Keep that in mind, because it is the line we will meet again in a minute when we talk about energy. The second measurement counts bytes, and it only counts what got in. The nearly 10,000 accepted fragments weighed, as text, 6.8 megabytes. After RAM consolidation, 4.8 remain. 29% less. Only 29? Look closer. Accepted pieces drop by 83% from nearly 10,000 to 1,700. Bytes drop by 29. The gap between those two numbers has a name: density. A consolidated memory is not a fragment. It is the synthesis of 5 or 6 fragments with sources and context, so it is bigger than any one of them, but it is one. The knowledge is not thrown away, it is rewritten, compact. Picture an archivist who receives 100 minutes of the same meeting, written by 100 different people. 80 get sent back at the door, duplicates, they do not even come in. Of the 20 good ones, the archivist does not keep 20 copies. He writes one definitive record, longer than any single copy, but one. The objects in the archive collapse. The shelf gets lighter, less dramatically. And the office runs twice as fast. So here is the pair to remember. Counts measure the work you avoid. Bytes measure the archive you keep. Intact and connected. 16,000 links in the graph. Thousands of entities and claims extracted. And on the benchmark, the measurement that matters. To answer one question, the memoryless system rereads 26,000 tokens. Cortex uses about 1,400, minus 95%. Not 95% faster, mind you. 95% of the work simply not done. Every question, forever. With accuracy that, under the same conditions, stays in line with the memory systems published on the same benchmark. Now the $1 million question. Actually, the $6.7 trillion question, given what is being invested. What would happen if a memory like this, today, were the standard? If every long chat, every enterprise agent, every RAG system in the world stopped rereading and started remembering. Let's do the math together, out loud. Assumptions on the table. 4 multiplications. Anyone can redo them at home. Assumption 1. Data centers consume about 500 terawatt-hours a year today. The IEA figure for 2025. Take the central estimate for AI's share, 15%. That is 75 terawatt-hours of artificial intelligence. Assumption 2. Within AI, roughly half is training and half is inference, the everyday use. Cortex does not touch training. That leaves about 37 terawatt-hours of inference. Assumption 3. Within inference, how much is rereading context and memory? Long chats, agents, enterprise assistants, document systems. A conservative share today is 40%. That is 15 terawatt-hours a year spent, worldwide, making AIs reread what they have already read. Assumption 4. The only one that comes from our own measurements. A governed memory cuts that work by about 90%. On the benchmark, we measured minus 95. Let's stay conservative. Result. Roughly 13 to 14 terawatt-hours a year saved. Today, right now, how much is 13 terawatt-hours? The electricity of 5 million Italian households for a year. In continuous power, about 1.5 gigawatts. The equivalent of 40 to 50 mid-size hyperscale data centers that are no longer needed. Or, if you prefer the image, roughly Italy's entire data center fleet, those 168 buildings, switched off. In emissions, at the world's average grid intensity, on the order of 5 million tons of CO2 a year avoided. But the real point is not today. It is the trajectory. By 2030, on IEA numbers, data centers reach 945 terawatt-hours, and AI is worth 35 to 50% of that. And the fastest growing part is exactly the agents. Systems that work for hours, accumulate context, and today are the most voracious rereaders of all. Run the same 4 multiplications on 2030, with inference now dominant and memory workloads at half of it, and the potential saving lands between 90 and 145 terawatt-hours a year. 90 to 145 terawatt-hours. Between a tenth and a seventh of every data center on the planet. Up to half the electricity consumption of all of Italy. In buildings, 250 to 400 hyperscale data centers that would not need to be built, out of the 800 already in the pipeline. And here I have to stop and tell you something, because this podcast has one rule. Estimates get declared. Those numbers are a model, not a measurement. The measurements are the minus 95% on the benchmark and the minus 87% of estimated energy on the production instance. The 4 assumptions in the chain, AI share, inference share, memory share, we chose them conservatively and we told you each one. Change them and the result changes. Cortex does not switch off data centers. It does not touch model training. It does not touch video generation. It touches memory. But memory is becoming the dominant workload of operational AI, and that is exactly where 90% of the work is avoidable. No technology switches off existing data centers. This one avoids building part of the future ones, and that is the part growing fastest. One last thing before we close. This story does not come from a giant. Cortex is built by Skynet Lab, an independent research lab in Bergamo, Italy, founded by a researcher, Filippo Pilotta, who filed the patent with the Italian Patent Office in May 2026. The benchmark is public, on the website, with a rare quirk for this industry. The discarded measurements are published too, the ones that looked better and were wrong. The energy estimates are labeled as estimates, with the assumptions written next to them. And the whole system runs on European infrastructure, with the AI transparency of Article 50 of the EU AI Act already applied in production. You can build serious AI infrastructure without $1 billion. You need the right idea, stubborn execution, and the discipline to measure everything, including what is inconvenient. Recap, 3 sentences. Today's AI is that brilliant consultant who starts from zero every morning, and the world is building hundreds of buildings to pay for the rereads. Cortex is the memory that filters at the door, consolidates in its sleep, and declares its own doubts. Minus 95% of work on the same question, measured, not promised. And if this became the norm, the impact would not be measured in slides. It would be measured in terawatt hours, in tons of CO2, in data centers never built. Because the future of AI is not only measured by how many data centers we manage to build, it is also measured by how many we never need to.